about it.
All right. Hey, man. What's going on?
Hello.
Hey,
Not
hey.
much talking to you.
Yeah, just like last time, right? All right.
Yeah.
So today, of course, this is the first episode of Futurama Space Pilot 3000, or as we like to call it, you got to do what you got to do, which seems to be the overall theme of everything. So that's all good. Overall, what do you think of this being like the original first episode, like how everything goes? What do you think of it?
Oh, I like it. It's you got to start somewhere. That's always hard with pilots.
True.
I've watched many pilots and stuff like that, and you're kind of like,
Yeah.
I don't know. I'll give it a few shows before I, say like, yeah, I'll watch the rest of it, or no, I won't watch the rest of it.
Right.
But like, I can't say I did that with the show because I was like, I don't know, 9 or 10 when it came out, and it's not really, for kids that age
That's
kind of
right.
thing.
Yeah,
So
it's yeah.
I've seen bits and pieces of like episodes further on. So when I actually finally got around to it, I already knew what I was getting into. So I can't really say I remember this wasn't the first episode I saw of Futurama, so it's not fresh to me that way. It wasn't my first experience.
Right. Yeah, no, actually that's fair because this wasn't the first episode I ever watched either, but having it be the pilot, yeah, it's not as funny, but it's still kind of sets up a lot of these things, right? And there are
Absolutely, yes.
jokes in here that, years later I can
You would
appreciate
get
a little bit more. Yeah. So I do enjoy watching it, but it's obviously not my favorite, but I'd still rank it,
no.
fairly decent for it. It's a reason why it set up the show to be what it is.
It's a good pilot. That's
For
what I
sure.
would say.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And there's a lot of bad pilots out there, right? So we know
Oh God,
this is really good.
anything
Yeah.
pretty much in the last
Oh well.
decade, we'll say.
Yeah.
A good chunk of the
A good
last
chunk
decade.
of it, right? Yeah, it's hard to find good pilots for anything. But in any
Yeah.
case, so this episode is interesting, of course, because we start off, in at the time contemporary present day 1999,
1999, yeah.
right? December 31st.
Which is, at this point feels like 30 years ago, which, it's only 23, 24 years ago.
Is, but that's exactly it, right?
20, yeah.
So we have all this stuff. So, we're introduced to Philip J. Fry, played by Billy West, and of course he's
20-something-year-old.
Totally pizza delivery guy, hates his life, everything is just going wrong, and he's just down in the dumps kind of guy, right?
Yeah,
but
I think a lot of us have
yeah.
that in our 20s kind of thing. It's just like, oh my god.
Yeah, well that's what makes him, I think, so appealing, is that he's
relatable.
Kind of he's the everyday guy who just everything bad happens to, which is unfortunate.
Yeah, definitely probably got into this in my probably early 20s, maybe late teens.
Sure.
Yeah, I can't remember, but I definitely love the show. No, I wouldn't be going through the same kind of thing with Fry because, I went to college and stuff like that, so I kind of had a direction. But
well,
like Fry's just
right?
kind of the lazy man. Oh yeah, yeah.
Right. He did too briefly, yeah. Right?
Yeah.
Go Whitefish. But in any case, it's that is Fry, right? And then he's always through there. Now we open, of course, to him being in that video game, right? Which I don't know if this is a very I don't know if that was
stink loser.
I don't know if it was a real. It's based on a real game, obviously, but it's not. It's kind of like a mixture of like Donkey Kong, Mario, Space Invaders, right? Because you have like Donkey Kong essentially throwing the barrels at the spaceship in space, which is just a great little gag there, right? Because it's really funny for it.
Well, I think it tried to do like the whole Captain Kirk thing with the Stardate kind of thing.
That's right.
And then it's just trying to show you how funny it is and how it's going to have fun making fun of space,
of course. And then one of the most reoccurring characters that only ever says like maybe 3 lines, Mr. Panucci, with his like pizza going out line every time.
Come on.
But that guy, I mean, I can't remember who plays Mr. Panucci. I'm sure it's like Herman
John
or something.
DiMaggio.
Was it DiMaggio? Okay, John DiMaggio. Yep. But like that character, like saying it the way he does, like no one can ever really reclaim that, right? So I think he does that very well. They parried it throughout the whole series. It's very, very good.
Yeah, I think he got brought up a few times. Like there's obviously the time travel movie where he went back in time as a clone.
Yeah. Well, that's when he has the most lines, right? Because that's when they actually talk with him.
And then there was the saddest episode one of the saddest episodes of Futurama, but like the good sad of with Seymour. Kind of thing.
But in the future, I want to get more into like Seymour and what I'll call the Fry the past Fry episodes that focus, or the Fry family episodes, which we focus
Yeah.
a lot more on him as a developing character, because
I was a
all of
little
those
late in seeing how those
episodes,
were there. Like, though that was like the second set of seasons or whatever. The
yeah,
second set of Futurama.
for sure. Well, all of those
Post movies. It was
episodes,
post movies.
all those episodes are just incredibly sad because it's all about, the development of Fry's family and everything, and we see a little bit more about him, what makes him who he is. But in this episode, obviously, it's just on Fry, so we just have this kind of thing. So
here's a question for you then.
Yeah, go ahead.
Do you think, like, it's just one of those things with TV, especially like we'll say The Simpsons or Family Guy or Bob's Burgers and kind of thing. They've been on air for years and decades, kind of thing, right?
Yeah.
They never really technically age, kind of thing.
Right.
Do you think in Futurama they do age? And I do have a counter to this if you say yes.
That's the thing, because if you think here, Fry is probably like in his mid 20s, I'll say, like 24, 25 years old.
It said he was born in 74 or 75 or something like that, which is like,
so at
can
that
you confirm
time,
that? I don't know.
So at that time, he would have been 25, right? In
24,
1999.
25, yeah.
So, right. So if that's the case, and of course, don't forget, Fry, the Professor, and Bender are all like billions of years old because they went through time.
Technically, yes.
Right. And it destroyed a couple universes. So, okay, if you're going to play off with the physical age of these characters, I do think they age, but they age.
My counter to that is
crap,
what's his name? Conrad, Hermes, and then the young clone Hubert.
Oh, Hermes' son.
Hermes'
Dwight.
son, and then
Dwight Conrad.
Dwight,
yeah.
right? Sorry, right. Dwight Conrad. Sorry, my bad.
Yeah.
And then the clone
Hubert,
of the professor.
Hubert Farnsworth. Right.
Is it Hubert or Hubert?
Hubert is the professor. Hubert is the kid. Yeah.
They're still kids technically at the end of the season and stuff like that too. So technically, time doesn't pass. It's just one of those things where you just have to
it's cartoons,
they've spent
right? Yeah.
They've spent time together. There's not necessarily a range of time, but yeah.
Exactly.
It's not like, say, like, for example, Modern Family, which is real life, obviously, right? You can't have the kids be the same age until season 10 or 11, or whatever they had.
No, the kids actually have to grow up and such, right?
Yeah.
No, that's the beauty of cartoons. This is why Simpsons and Family Guy can go on for years and years and years as well, because they are just like cartoons. And as long as the voice doesn't change, then they don't need to age, right? And of course, you can still have people play the younger voices change, right? So anyway, we continue on with Fry, and then of course he leaves. Oh no, it's all good. He goes through, because we can talk about these scenes, right? And he's going there, and he's on his little bike, and of course the bike gets stolen, and he meets up with, or he sees right. He sees briefly. He sees a girl that we will be introduced to way late in the series, which is his girlfriend at the time, Michelle. And I think she's played by a different actress here, because of course we didn't know whether or not they'd be bringing her back.
Yeah. The second iteration is played by Sarah Silverman.
Sarah Silverman.
Right, an unlikable character.
Unlikable person. Sometimes with an unlikable character. True, and that's going to come again later. But yeah, Sarah Silverman's later rendition. This is barely any mention of it, but it's cool that they kind of continue with that in the future, right?
Yeah, it's nice nice little callbacks and stuff like that.
Yeah, nice little thing with it. So let's get into the main part here, right in the end. So he gets upstairs. The guy steals his bike. He goes upstairs, and of course he's looking for Icy Wiener, right? And of course he's like, I thought I would be doing the crank calls, right? He's just like, I'm so annoyed. And of course he sits down. Now, I did write down here, this is something with my notes. There was something called the countdown gags, right? Which is them going through like all the different countries, and they're all doing a countdown of the of everything, right? Of the new year. So do you know what's interesting about this scene that I kind of didn't really pick up on until like kind of yesterday? I didn't really think about it. Well, they're all establishing, because they have New York, obviously. They've got France, they've got China, they have Japan, they have like all these other countries all around the world, but they don't celebrate New Year's at the same time. So they're doing a countdown. Yeah, they're doing a countdown from everything because of the time difference, but it's kind of weird. Even though the numbers are correct, they're all like, this is all to New York. So it's kind of interesting that they had that going on at the same time. So I didn't really pick that up until recently. I thought maybe they would have.
I think it's just kind of like
places. Yeah.
Well, I mean, at the time, inclusion wasn't really like a thing people thought about other than just like, hey, let's just do this for fun, or hey, I like this person, let's get them instead, kind of thing.
Right.
So I think that was just like everyone in the world celebrates Happy New Year, right? The New Year's,
The
right?
New Year.
Regardless,
Yeah.
because it's now a new year. You're not going to be in 1999. You're now in 2000, kind of thing.
Right.
Mind you, yeah, people who live, oh god, where's it? Where whatever, 18 hours ahead of where I live are in a different day compared to me at some times of the day, right? So
Right.
I
Yeah.
think it was just
Wherever it is. Yeah.
everyone's celebrating New Year's, everyone's doing it, kind of thing.
Right. So you can kind of chalk that up to being like, oh, okay, so just this is New Year's. Everybody in the world is celebrating to show how happy they are, all to juxtapose Fry, who's depressed and alone and all this kind of stuff, right? So that's probably what it was.
Exactly, yeah. Showing opposites or whatever, contrast. There we go,
Yeah,
contrast.
exactly. So anyway, he does a little sound or whatever with the little whatever that whistle thing is, falls back, and of course
Party blower.
we now know this in the future. We know this, of course, to be Nibbler, and then of course later will
Yeah,
be
the shadow.
Delph,
I
right?
love that they thought far
No
ahead for
kidding.
that. It proves quality thinking of
Yeah,
storytelling,
of
and
course.
yeah, not what's that called? The Russian man's gun. What's that called?
Chekhov's
Chekhov's
gun.
gun.
Chekhov's gun. So
Chekhov's
that's
gun. Yeah,
Chekhov's gun. And for those who don't know Chekhov's gun, that's the idea of having like
a
if
writing
in
thing.
scene one, yeah, it's a writing technique. In scene one, if you mention that there's a weapon or some kind of like in this case it was a gun, then by the time of the third act, you must use that gun because otherwise, why mention it? And so it's called like this lazy writing, right? So as I think you're about to say, you can explain what you mean with Chekhov's gun and
Oh,
the
just
shadow.
they bring back Nibbler. I can't even remember. Like I think on episode 7 or something like that. But that's just
Oh,
Nibbler,
like a
and
few episodes later, not even like few
yeah,
episodes, like four episodes maybe.
5 or
Yeah,
6. Whenever you first
whatever.
meet one of the best
We'll
characters in
get there.
Futurama, Zap Brannigan, but they don't really do like the actual like, hey, that was Nibbler back in the past
Mhm.
till way later, right? I can't
Right,
remember. One of my favorite episodes for sure. Yeah, the
for
brain
sure.
one.
I love that one as well. We definitely, I can't wait to get to that one. There's so many episodes I look forward to with this, but that's the beauty
Oh,
of this pilot, right? Is that they set up so much that you look forward to. You're like, that gets referenced in this episode. This gets
oh
referenced in
yeah,
that episode. We
yeah.
have all this, and it's so well done. So I think that's what I really appreciate about this pilot.
Oh, me too.
Um,
I kind of
yeah,
wish that they like did a little more of like his parents or something, or even like his brother, but they don't do that till way later.
later, right?
Also,
Yeah.
yeah.
Yeah, but I think like there's only so like when you honestly sit down and as we break down this episode, like this is only
There's
22
not much
minutes
that, yeah.
long.
There's not much they could have done
Yeah,
beforehand.
there's so much that they do in this episode in the first place. So I'm glad they didn't touch upon his parents yet. But you know, he got his
Well, what
work,
is it?
you got his work, you got his job,
Yeah.
or so, I guess that's the same thing. You got his job, you got some of his co-workers with Panucci, you got his city life, you got his mode of transportation, right? Like he's poor and his lifestyle. You got his ex-girlfriend who's basically like, you know, shows up in front of him in a taxi with another guy, like he knows like something's going on, even though he's dumb. And you know how his lifestyle is because you know people steal,
Less
people do all this
than
stuff. It's not great.
desired.
Right.
Yeah, less than desired.
And you get all of that in the span of like 4 minutes.
Two. He
2 minutes.
falls into the cryo pod.
Cryo 2, cryopod. Yeah, you're right.
The cryopod like before 2 minutes. I'm having it on my screen right here, kind of shot for shot. I have the sound off in case it picks it up. It
Sure,
might
for
have picked
sure.
up a little bit beforehand.
Sure.
So sorry, viewers, if there was garbling beforehand from it. Sorry.
I don't think we heard anything, so it's all good.
It's just in case. I have no idea how the recording works.
Oh, gotcha. No, it doesn't. As long as it's on both of our ends here, it's okay. So
Just saying.
if anything happened with Fry, right? This is the time when he falls back due to Nibbler, ends in the cryo tube, and then in the background, this is a great little gag as well because we find out more about this, of course, in one of the movies. But that's of course Bender
Later.
destroying time and destroy back and forth a couple of times with the space saucers and the buildings, right? But I thought that was really neat. So it kind of shows you the development of how New York kind of comes up from how New York City kind of fell below it, right? So this is why the remains of it are all below.
I think one of my favorite
in,
things too about
yeah.
this sequence
Yeah,
is
yeah.
just when he pops out, the timer is an analog timer. which is a
Oh,
very,
right.
1990s,
Old
early
school. Yeah.
2000s thing, right?
Yeah, like a
There's not a lot of
microwave.
analog stuff. Yeah,
Yeah.
exactly. There's not a lot of
Yeah.
analog timers anymore. It's all digital, and
Right.
like that's a very of its time thing. Which this is a 1999 show, so
Yeah.
there's gonna be things that people animate or show even in real life
Yeah.
shows back then. Like there's no cell phones at this point. I don't think cell phones are even
No,
thought, like they're definitely not for the regular
not for
average person at
everybody.
this
Right.
point.
Well, I was just
There's
gonna
phone
say.
cars and
Yeah.
stuff like that, and
Yeah.
I'm pretty sure there was cell phones in the early 90s and stuff, but like no one had them except for like the people developing them, I think, and maybe rich people.
Right.
But I just love the fact that it was an analog timer,
Timer.
because I'm just thinking to myself when I saw that, I was like, the numbers are digital, but the timer is analog. So it's such a weird
Sure.
thing to
Yeah.
think about
It's
a future that we are currently to what it was then. Mind you,
right.
I still have a stove with analog, and I hate analog still. So
It's well, analog is just difficult to kind of get that perfect
yeah,
time
I
that you
want
want, right?
I
So
want 400 degrees Fahrenheit,
perfectly.
not
Yeah.
450, which is like the next nook,
Notch, right?
which
Yeah,
I have overcooked my food before because of it.
for sure. And well, another thing as well is it's kind of funny from like a background sense. So you see Fry, he's lined up right with the cam. Well, I know it's how it's animated, but it looks like with the camera, right? And then in the background, you see
Huh?
Bender destroy all of the background area, and like those cities gets built up, right? Rebuilt. But then, of course, the building that Fry's in is
Still
not
survives.
touched, right? And all of those tubes are still the same. So it's like that's kind of a funny design too. So that analog thing that you mentioned survives 1,000 years, and they never update it to be anything else, right? Oh, it's such a
No.
funny. In itself is kind of a gag because he opens up, he's like a fridge, and he like steps
Uh,
up, and he's like all this his beer and everything. So, oh, and can we also like pay a little bit of respect to the amount of brands they designed for this like series, like
oh,
lowbrow
Bachelor
beer,
Chow.
Bachelor Chow,
Oh,
whatever else you have. Like they had so many great ideas. What's that one? Lightspeed briefs in the future, right? Like all these things.
I don't think that one got brought up as much, but basically whenever
Yeah.
there was like the title sequence, you saw
Right.
Bachelor Chow. You saw a lot of stuff.
Yes. Mhm.
If you were to freeze, I have to go back and look at it,
Sure.
but it's just very funny to see what they have and stuff like that. And I think they kept most of it, except for like the old cartoon playing on the giant TV, and as well like with the message that they had after it said Futurama. It was this one is at in color, because I can't remember what the
Yes.
callback for that is, but that's
Yeah.
like Technicolor or something like that. I can't
Right.
remember when that
Well,
came in, and I should.
well, I think so. Within color, because you're right. Every beginning of the episode, I forgot to mention this. Thank you for bringing this up. Is everything with like some kind of reference to either like a movie or some kind of thing with technology, right? So this one in color is because Futurama set in the future, and then of course it's making a joke that it's like, oh, it's in color, just like they used to have back in like the '60s when they would have like old TV shows that were still black and white, but then they would say, oh yeah, this one's in color, so it was like a little bit more special. So that's kind of what they're relating to with it. Now we go into here, Fry gets out, and then of course we're introduced to. I almost chose this guy to be my favorite of MVP for this, but I'll save that till the end. But this guy, right? Welcome to the
To the
world of
world
tomorrow, right?
tomorrow.
And the showmanship guy. I think his name is Terry. I think Leela actually mentions his name in the episode, right? So
Yeah.
these two guys, they take him in there, say have a good future. Fry's like wondered by the outside, the technology, gets hit by the door, like all this stuff, right? And then of course we're introduced to,
Uh,
I would
I like the
say,
Doors. Yeah.
the door is great. I would say one of the best, if not one of the best female characters written of all time, but one of the best characters I would say almost written of all time for a TV show, of course, Taranga
Yeah.
Leela. So what's your feeling of Taranga Leela?
Love her. She's awesome. She's hilarious.
Right.
I do. I think a lot of the characters identify with her quite a bit too, a little way, because
Yeah.
she gets angry and uses her hands. She makes people catch her
Yeah.
fists.
She's
And
she's definitely not like your girly girl type of character, right? Like she's just
no,
like
but she
so
still likes to think she is too at the same time.
of course, yeah. Oh yeah, that's the thing, right? She's so insecure because she wants to be beautiful, she wants to be accepted, she wants her family, she wants all these things. and then she's not that, right? So she has to be
Oh,
alone.
she's awesome.
She puts up all these barriers, right? So she's very relatable in a lot of senses, right? And I think that's kind of what makes people are attracted to her in a lot of ways too, her and Fry, for that reason. So anyway, she brings him in. They do their little test, that machine that pops up once in a while, the proballator. And then, of course, what is Fry's? They have to get a career chip, of course, because this is the future. Everybody gets assigned a job because whatever reasons.
I don't like that part of the future.
That's a scary thought, isn't it? Because
yes.
that does happen. That is something that people have suspected could happen. But this is, of course, 1,000 years. Who knows the key?
But I do want to say something though about Leela.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
At this point, she is like, I'm an alien, all right. That's why I got
the eye, right? Of course, yeah.
Yep. So I just love that question, or just the first kind of interaction was like, hey, you gonna ask me a question? Yeah. Is it about my eye? No. Well, ask me a question. Well, what's with the eye? Kind of thing. And I'm an alien, all right.
Sort of.
And
like, it's sort of about the eye. And then,
so this is our first interaction with a quote alien. So it's very interesting. So like we're like, okay, this is not just like future Earth. There's something different about it. And like you can also kind of get that too when he looks outside. There's flying vehicles and stuff like that.
Right.
And even like the credits, which is right after he sees the future, then it goes into the credits. You can see in the credits that there's definitely not human beings.
That's right.
So it's like, oh, cool, first contact and stuff like that. Now they never got into first contact things and stuff like that, and who knows, maybe they might in the future episodes. But I just like the fact it's kind of like this. I think this show is very heavily influenced by Star Trek a lot.
Well, of course, Star Trek. Definitely all the greats when it came to sci-fi, right? Star Trek, Star Wars.
I still think Star Trek was more of the closely thing, just with the whole like the dupe.
Of course, the Democratic Order of Planet. So it was because it's related to Earth, right? Which Star Trek was. Yeah. Star Wars is
exactly,
so it's not able to do so. So absolutely, you're right. I think Star Trek. Plus, I think all the writers of it were somehow fans of Star Trek in one way or another.
Yeah.
Right? But actually, that was another, and that's a really funny gag as well. So you're talking about the analog machine beforehand, right? Which is like this old technology that you're like, why is this in the future? And then, of course, Fry's looking past Leela and he sees the blimp. And it says, welcome to the year 3000. And he's like, wait, is that blimp accurate? And you're like, there's a blimp? You have flying cars, but you have a blimp still? So, this is a very weird
and it's
situation.
Still like, I think the Goodyear blimp, which I don't think was even a thing. Like when we were in our teens or early teens, like I don't remember that being. For some reason, I know that's an important thing in history for like I think New York. But like it's such a New York thing that I don't really know how to associate it with it as like a memory or anything. Like I know it's in other cartoons like Family Guy and stuff like that and Simpsons, but like I don't know
outside of New York
if they still currently have it
in
the year 2022.
It's interesting with that as well. I agree, because it's kind of a weird situation where you don't really have any other references to the blimp outside of like New York City premises, right? Like the settings with it is New York City. So when you have the future,
there's air balloons, but not blimps.
Right, exactly. So when you have the far future of New York is still having blimps, that is kind of a funny thing that only
that is a 1999 callback, I think, 100% there. Yeah.
But only 1999 New Yorkers and maybe like relative close Americans can kind of agree or like find funny, right? Like they're like, oh, okay, ha ha ha. But like, for us, which we're on the opposite side of the country in another area, in another country, you would think, oh, okay, that's just a funny gag, because why do they have a blimp? But maybe there's more to it than that. So,
I think it was the setup for like when Fry was like, "Is that blimp accurate?" Yes. My God, a million years.
Right.
Just so kind of proves his stupidity.
That, right. Exactly.
Yeah.
And that's the key with the writing, right? Is to show you like show don't tell when it comes to this, right? So how he says
100% agree on that.
It's 100. Yeah. He's an idiot for sure. So anyway, Fry freaks out because of course his career chip states that he's going to be a
delivery boy,
which he doesn't want to be. Obviously, he's a delivery boy back in the year 2000 or 1999. He doesn't want to be one in the year 3000. So what does he do? He runs.
He runs away.
Out there. Leela's going after him. Now this is really, really clever. I thought this was hilarious because they never had to do this ever. Nobody ever would have thought about this. I don't believe. But Leela tries getting him, and they're in like the cryopod area. And she swipes at him, and she misses him like by a lot because she doesn't have good depth perception because she only has one eye. And she says this, and I was like, that is so well written. Like it's like, damn it, because I don't have good depth perception. And she's like trying to grab him, and then of course he knocks her into the tube, sets up another 1,000 years, then he changes it over to back to 5 minutes, right? And so this kind of sets up a nice thing, because you know that Fry, even though he's stupid, at least he has a good heart.
He's a good heart, yeah.
Right. This is that kind of thing. He doesn't want to be, a bad guy. He could have screwed her over, and he didn't. So I think this is.
I think you've missed the best part about this episode. My favorite part about this episode.
Okay, go for it. Where is this?
So basically, right after the probulator, and that basically was just to say like, oh hey, you have a relative.
Oh, of course, yeah.
Great, and then there's like a time lapse thing of him putting on clothes, and basically that's how we know about Professor.
Like 100 greats.
100 greats later, or something like that, and he's like 140 or 50 or something years old.
That's right.
Anyway, so then she's like, yeah, you gotta get your career chip, and then so he's like, okay, well, what's that? And so he's like, well, it tells you what your job. Oh, cool. I don't get to be a delivery boy anymore. Bloop. You're going to be a delivery boy. No. And then she's like, you have to do this. It's what everyone does. And then she points at the poster. My favorite poster in the world. And it's this construction guy with his thumbs up looking sad. And the quote of it is, you got to do what you got to do.
That's right.
Which to me is it's a scary. I love that poster because that's kind of what
the
world
well
is going
done.
towards.
Yeah, such a really well made thing. And I think for the picture of this episode, you made it so that you have us with that guy.
I have our avatars all looking sad, and there's him also. I did change his design a little bit, but yeah.
And I think that's kind of the whole thing with this theme of this episode, right? Is all about you got to do what you got to do. Like there's a few characters that mention this, and they all talk about it, and they're kind of going through this like in this future everything is set for you, so you got to do it. And Fry's like, from the time when this isn't a thing, so he can't accept it, right? So
imagine being like, as soon as you're of age or whatever, they don't really explain in the world. It's like, you're gonna be a janitor for the rest of your life. Oh hey, your marks are good or whatever, you're gonna be a doctor when like, you say you don't like, you're squeamish with blood, and so on and so on and so forth. I don't like the fact of being told what to do. You're very limited and stuff like that, but hey, you got to do what you got to
do, and that's the it, right? That's it.
Exactly.
And of course, and with Earth as well, I'm just thinking outside of this. Well, speculating about it, just thinking outside of it. Like in that world, right, where Earth has become, the center of certain areas for other planets in this like different kind of organization, democracy thing with other systems. And then, of course, you have aliens coming in back and forth. Like they have alien embassies now. So, of course, Earth is even more populated, even more diverse, even more all of this stuff, right? So, if you're
at least New York, I don't think we really got to see many other cities.
Well,
but we can assume.
Right. Well, these are the jokes in the future, right? We know that there are scenes where they still go to like Rome, for example, which still looks identical to Rome, even though it's 1,000 years, or China, which is even like not even present day China. It's like 1,000 years ago China.
It's old China.
From that time, it's ancient, like even way before 1999. So they play with that a little bit, I think, which is okay. But yeah, New York seems to be the only, and Los Angeles, which seem to be the only place.
Right, that was a joke. That was one where he re-met his old girlfriend.
Right.
They made a lot of jokes about that too.
Of course, it's LA, right? So I think that's another thing about Americans making fun of Americans, and that's a funny thing to do so as well. Cool. All right. So then we get out. So Fry gets out. He changes the little analog timer to be 5 minutes so that it saves Leela. Go ahead.
Well, the career chip has to be stabbed into his hand in order for it to work.
Right.
Too. Like you get it pierced through your hand, and he was just like no, and then he runs and stuff. And there's anher door joke there where instead of the door opening like it does in like a normal door, it opens up like I don't know what to call it, a sliding door. Right. But like he's like, where's it gonna come from? But he still gets hit by the door.
Right.
They use that door joke lots of times and stuff like that, and I love it.
Well, he is stupid. That's what happened.
So yeah, so yeah. Then he runs, and then he goes outside, and then he sees how weird
the world
is. Yeah.
And I do have to comment on the animation and the design of all of this stuff, right? I think you can appreciate it too, because as he's walking through, and you even hear like the score, like the music is set in.
It's a very unique score. I think
Right.
they use it
Yeah.
as background noise a lot, but this is the one where you definitely can hear it.
Yeah.
One of my favorite things too, and another thing like the analog thing of its time is there's a I can't remember what they're called, but there's the billboards that have
Yeah.
multiple pictures, and like when they flip
Yeah. The
to
sliding,
like a new
the
picture.
switching screens, or
Yeah,
the sliding
they
screens. Yeah.
have
Yeah.
that, but
Yeah.
there's also one that's like it's not in sync. So there's like the fourth
Right.
slide in is part of
Right.
Bachelor Chow, and then
Right.
switches again. You can see that now there's Bachelor Chow, but that one slot is like still not in sync, and I love it because it's true.
It speaks to like how perfect the society kind of looks from above, right, with all the grand buildings, but then when you get to street level, it's not great at all. It's still New York City. It's still this like, well, as you hear from the mayor in the future episodes, right, like the garbage might be gone, but crime is still around. I mean, and this actually moves on to this thing. So Fry has his sheet, right, with his nephew. So yeah, thank you for bringing that up as well. And he's looking for where this person is because this is his relative. And then of course he sees a little thing that looks like a phone booth, which of course is another form of 1999 technology that doesn't exist in the present
Oh,
day
geez,
world.
like it's hilarious to see a phone. They're not phone booths. We don't have phone booths here in Canada, I don't think. But basically, we just had
Payphone
payphones,
areas, right, on the wall or
which
something.
to the viewers who don't know what those are, which maybe we have some, maybe we don't. It was a
Sure.
thing of its time. This is before cell phones, and like kind of during the beginning of cell phones, you'd always have to carry around 35 cents, at least here in Canada at the time, 35 cents. And I think you can get like a 3-minute call or
Right.
something like that with
To
35 cents.
call a cab, or to call your
Call a
friend, or to
cab,
call your
call
parents,
mom and dad to come
wherever
pick
you
you up,
were.
or a
Exactly. Yeah.
sibling or whatever.
You
Yeah,
needed help. If you couldn't
yeah.
go into a restaurant and ask to borrow their phone because maybe they needed you to pay for something which you couldn't afford because
Yes,
you're a kid, right?
you're a kid.
So
Yeah.
yeah. So it was difficult to
This
do
is
this.
back
Some people were
when
good.
parents would let their kids go out and play
Right. Yeah.
outside. And all of
Yeah.
a sudden, you're in a different community. You're like, well, I don't know where I am. Oh, I know that Safeway's over there. Yeah, yeah, yeah. There's a Max. Oh, yeah, I know where I am. Hey,
Right.
mom, can you come pick me up? I don't. It's gonna take me like 2 hours to walk home.
Yeah,
No.
you got that luxury. I never got that luxury. I had to walk home. They wouldn't pick me up even if I could call them. But I do remember the 7-Elevens and or other convenience stores. If you asked them for a phone, they were pretty good about giving you the phone. So that was always
That's
kind of
awesome.
yeah.
I never had the they're strangers. I don't want to talk to strangers.
Well, you didn't
Just
learn this skill, I guess. But
no, I didn't. No,
unlike
no.
unlike us, of course, Fry knows how to use a payphone and he knows what to do
Yes.
with this kind of thing. But he just stands in line waiting. Now, another thing to show and to attest the stupidity of Fry, right, is that he's waiting in line, but he never questions that people who go into the booth never come out of it. So he's just kind of like, whatever. And he keeps on walking. And then this is when we are introduced to the trio, the third one of the trio, Mr. Bender, right? And Bender, of course, is,
Rodriguez.
Bender Rodriguez, Bender B.
Bender
Rodriguez,
Bending Rodriguez.
who at this point is not really how can you describe Bender in this episode? Like he's not the
He's
Bender
curt
we
with people.
knew. Yeah.
Well, there's a whole bunch of theories and stuff like that, and I'll talk
Yes.
about the
Me too.
we haven't really said what the phone booth is yet, so I'll
Right.
get to that
We'll get to
afterwards.
that
But
afterwards. Yes.
as for
Yeah.
Bender, yeah, he's definitely, I don't know, more of a jerk, but not like the fun kind of jerk.
But is he a jerk though in this part? Like in the first episode, like he later in the episode he kind of shows that, but at this point, yeah, he kind of like yells at Fry, or calls him like a meat bag or whatever after, kiss my shiny metal ass, which of course the catchphrase of Bender, or bite my metal ass, sorry. So here we have, Fry and Bender meeting, and then, Bender just says like, oh, it's shinier than yours, meat bag. So you can see he's not very nice, but he's not evil. He's not angry. He's not any of the stuff. He's just going along his way. He's like a normal person that's just having a disagreement with some guy on the street, right? So he's not the Bender we know yet. He doesn't smoke. He's kind of like whatever. But then of course we get to the phone booth thing, and then they push it to it. So this is called
him doing that.
Yeah.
He puts a quarter in with a string tied around it, and then pulls it back out.
That's right. So we know. So okay. So there's two things about this too. So that means that we know that this Bender, or Bender in general, has tried to commit suicide before, and he has cheated the system before. because he knows that you can do a twofer. So he's tried to
Well,
do
I also
this.
like it too because this is I think this is my favorite joke in the
Okay, go for
episode
it.
where it's
Yeah.
like so like what are you? Oh, I'm a bending robot. Oh, what do you do? Yeah, I can bend anything, bend girders to anything.
Oh,
32
32
degrees,
degrees,
33
30 degrees,
degrees,
31.
31. He looks sad, like he can't do it. And then he
Right.
said, "Well, why why did you try to kill yourself in the suicide booth?" He's like, "Well, I found out what I was the bending the girders for." He's like, "What? Suicide booths." So he was
It's like a
making
nice
the
role,
suicide.
right?
Yeah,
Like that's it. That's his
yeah,
character, right? Yeah.
yeah.
I bend it any degree I want, but it turns out I'm building it for the thing that I don't want to build for, and then I'm going to use that thing to kill me, right? So I don't have to
Yeah,
build anymore.
yeah.
Yes.
I
Well,
love it.
that's after, of course, they do the whole thing with the suicide booth. So yeah,
Yeah,
let's talk about the
they try
suicide
to do
booths.
it, but yeah,
Right.
Fry still thinks it's
The phone booth. So he
a phone
goes
book. So
in.
he tries like, can I make a collect call? And then like the operator's like, you have chosen death, hurtful and long death,
Slow and
painful,
painful.
slow
Slow
and
and
painful.
painful.
Sorry,
Yeah,
sorry,
that's okay.
slow
No,
and
well,
painful.
in the beginning, of course, they walk in and then they have the operator, as you said, has the option like, would you like quick and painless or slow and painful? And Fry says, I'd like to make a
I'd
collect
like to
call,
make a
which is, of
collect call.
course, a direct joke to the idea that collect calls were painful because you would either lose the connection, you wouldn't be able to have the money, they wouldn't be able to hear you, any of this stuff, right? So he says this, and she says, you've chosen slow and painful, which, of course, is played by, I believe, Tress MacNeille. So, Bender, of course, like thinks he's taking too long, so he tries to get him for the twofer. He gets the slow and painful. He says, "Good choice." They have this whole thing, right? And there's like this this knife that sticks out, twists, and then says, "You are now dead," and then like leaves the receipt or something, right? So anyway, they leave. They end up going to
melon ballers for
which one?
melon balls for the eyes.
Oh,
I don't think they. I
that
don't
wasn't
know if
in
that was
this
a
one,
joke for
but
this one.
yeah, like
Oh, okay.
this one had drills and the knives and all this kind of like an axe or something, and maybe like a laser. They did all these things, like every form of pain that you could possibly have. Then at the very end, they gut you with a knife, and then I guess you die. But this also leaves the question: what did they do with the body? And I'm pretty sure it's supposed to open, and then you're supposed to fall through, but
All through, yeah.
they didn't do it, right? But who cares? It's a joke. So anyway, they leave, and then Fry and Bender meet, and at a very I guess
So
this place is actually. Oh,
before
go
you
ahead.
get to that, I wanted to
Yeah.
say I don't know where I saw this theory, but the whole thing was is that like it's 1,000 years in the future.
Right.
They should have amazing healthcare. The reason why suicide booths exist is because people don't die anymore because the healthcare is so good.
Right.
So
Well,
this is the
and
only
we
way they
know,
can die,
yeah,
other than I'm sure
yeah,
accidents and stuff like that, like getting hit by a
right,
space car or whatever like that. So
sure,
that's just a small little theory that someone had. There's a big explanation about it, I'm sure, but that's just one of the theories I
yeah,
heard. And I was like, yeah, that makes sense, but like also no, because again, accidents happen, right? It's not
sure.
like they can undo an accident.
And the people in this time, of, as we've seen, like they may have pretty decent health care. They also have no garbage, and this is like even in New York City for the most part.
Oh
And
yeah,
then
which is a terrible, trashy place, full of garbage place
yeah, for
kind
the
of thing.
most
Which
part,
you know,
right?
it's a
Yeah,
big city. It's
right.
hard to
This is
make
normal.
that
Yeah,
clean. Like I
right.
live in Vancouver, which is a big city in Canada, and there
Yeah,
is garbage and trash everywhere. And it's
of
not that
course.
people aren't picking up after themselves. It's just the amount of garbage that accumulates and stuff like it's better now than it was, of course, with
Right.
recycling and stuff like that. But
But it's still one of these
it
things,
still
right?
has
Yeah,
lots of garbage and stuff, and it's just due to population density kind of thing,
exactly.
right?
And that's going to be in, like you just said, like any major city, right? So even the
Exactly.
cities
Yeah.
I'm in, the city I'm in, like of course you're gonna have this kind of stuff everywhere. It won't matter. So the fact that the future right now, because we do learn later in this season that garbage isn't really something you find in Manhattan. Apparently, that
Yeah.
means they must have decent health care. They must have good garbage, and of course we learn later with other things that there's decent amount of peace, and then I guess there's not a lot of homelessness because the the judge ruled this is to be a form of mental problem, right? So they got rid of
mental
the homeless,
disability or whatever
the
you said.
mental
I can't remember.
disability. So any case, the suicide booth theory being that to kill people, because we also know the professor is 150 some years old, if not older.
Something like that. Yeah.
And so if he's just an average guy, imagine people who are actually very healthy and all this kind of stuff. So they could live for a very long time too with modern medicine. So you're right. I would believe that theory is a good idea for it, but again, they never touch base with it, right?
No, they
So
don't.
All right, so moving on then to find our next scene when we have with Fry and Bender in a pub. Flaxican or something. I think that's the name of it, or Flaxican or something. And this bar is actually a common place for the crew and for the main cast, right? They show up in this bar quite often. They have drinks. They have yeah. Leela and Amy go there for like she takes them out after Nibbler disappears. Bender shows up there with his kids when he adopts all those kids. Like there's many times they show up. I think Zap and Kiff show up around that area at one point when they're out of a job. Like there's all this.
Right. Okay. Yeah. Okay. Yeah. I never really paid attention to backgrounds all that much back then, kind of thing, right? Like it's just more about the funness of the voice acting and the story and the characters. Yeah. But now that I'm in the industry, it's like that backgrounds and stuff like that because
it's important.
This is a tangent, but just background designers and artists and stuff like that. Holy crap! That's a lot of skill and stuff like that. Perspective is a hard thing to draw.
A lot of work.
Especially with like buildings and stuff like that. Like even like in high school, I took art class and stuff like that. Like just knowing where's the vanishing point? Is this a 2-point or 3-point perspective?
Perspective
and stuff like that, or 1 point
shadowing
and stuff like that.
Because when I did art, different, but when I did art classes as well, because like when you do backgrounds, because you also have to know like where is the sun. So whenever you have your perspective, you have to know like where all these things are, right?
Yeah, so that's for higher detail stuff, not like Futurama, unless like, again with purpose and stuff like that. Like they're at a sunset, you need shadows to show that, or sunrise, whatever.
Right.
But just normal, like, it's just normally flat. It's cheap television, so there's not going to be as much shading. Here's like an example: just normal Simpsons versus the movie Simpsons. There was a budget difference, obviously, and the budget you could add shadows on characters and stuff like that for the movie. This is just regular television, so most things are flat unless directed differently or written differently. Right. So, but just backgrounds are cool. I will as we watch the episodes and stuff like that, I will try and pay attention to that. But you also do get to see a poster, a Slurm poster. I think this is the first time you see the Slurm. Alien language.
I forgot about Slurm. That's right. Yeah, that's right. You see the alien language. Well, it's either that's the first time or it's like on the. Oh, I forgot to mention a hilarious point as well. One of my favorites is when Fry first takes the tube, the actual tube, and then he slams it to the wall, and the guy's like, tourists. Like he, like one of these things, he doesn't know how to use it, right? But I believe in that area, that scene, there is a call to the alien language is on the wall somewhere, I believe.
All right,
but in any case, here we are there. So this is when Bender does one of your favorite jokes, right? The 32, 30, and 31 degrees, and he's super sad. And then who do we have outside? Leela, still looking for Fry. She got out of the tube. The guy still does the welcome to the world of tomorrow. And this is when she has like the shut up Terry thing. Like she calls him out on it. Now, when we have all
her boss makes fun of her. So and she's like, oh crap, I can't remember. But just basically had a poster of a monkey that says, I hate Mondays. And she's like, Monkey Monday lives for the weekends.
That's a different one though. That's not in this one, right? Because that's when they go and do poker. Yeah. No, what this one was, because this is my favorite joke of the episode, is when he says to her, like, it's your job to go and deal with this. And then she defends herself and saying like, he's just a nobody from the stupid ages. Like, I don't want to force it on him. He's like, it's your job to force it on him. Just like it's my job to make you do your job, whether I like it or not, which I do. and then she leaves. And then he's like, yeah, life is good. And this is like one of my favorite jokes for it. So I think he's actually really hilarious because we only see him a couple times. Any case.
This episode, I think when Fry and Bender get the jobs, they switch career chips or something. Hold
on. We'll get to that. But then
that's way down the line.
It's way down the line here. We'll get to that. But then anyway, back here. So she's looking for them. She has a picture of Fry. Obviously, she sees Fry in the window and she chases him. Now Bender is with him now, and they're helping each other out because they've decided to be friends. They're running through the museum. They go to the museum, and this is, I guess, like the pop culture aspect of Futurama, right? The heads in the jar. Which you don't really understand the technology of this or anything until like way later. And then even then, it's still kind of like up in the air about what this is. But it's so great because you can bring in famous people from the time to have cameos or roles in the show. Celebrities in this, right? Yeah. Such as
like Leonard Nimoy.
Yes. And I have here like great old Leonard Nimoy, who unfortunately is no longer with us, but at least he had the time to be in the show a few times as his as his head, right?
As his head, yeah.
And even having like Fry like, whoa, it's Spock, do the thing, and then he's like, I don't
The
do
live
that
long
anymore.
and prosper.
Yeah,
Because
right,
he's
exactly.
just a head in a jar.
It's just a head, and he's like, I don't do that anymore, and that's pretty great. That's a good, hilarious thing. Anyways, they go and hide in there.
I also love how
Leonard
they
Nimoy
feed the
has a
heads,
pretty
though.
good, yeah. Leonard Nimoy has a pretty good joke with it. Do you want to explain the feeding of the heads? How does this work?
So they're just their heads in a jar, right?
Yeah.
What kind of else swims around in an aquarium of fluid? Oh,
But not an
fish.
aquarium though. It's literally a jar. Like it's
It's
over the
it's a
sides
jar,
of your head, essentially, right? Yeah.
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 And so she's like feeding time, and then she comes with fish flakes. But I think they're oh crap, what are they called?
What? The opium?
Oh
Not the
no
opium.
no no
Like
no what?
it's
No,
food.
yeah, the food
Yeah.
made from people. What's it called?
Oh, the soy. I thought that was Bachelor Chow. Is it Soylent Green? Maybe.
No,
Oh,
Soylent Green.
Soylent Green, maybe. Yeah.
Yeah,
Sure.
which is a callback to an actual movie from like
That's
the
an actual thing. Yeah. That's from a
50s or something like
dystopia.
that.
Yeah. Because they run out of that's another thing when they have people, too many people, so they kill some of the people and then they feed them to people. Yeah, that's Soylent Green,
gross.
which could
But yeah,
also be a thing with the suicide booths.
yeah.
But yeah, I digress. Go ahead.
Oh, that's a good thing. Yeah. So then he starts eating it like a fish in an
Right.
aquarium. It's just funny because I think they do that multiple times with the head in the jars and stuff like that.
And well, even
But
his line right before that too. He's like, "Well, what do you do all day?" He's like, "Oh, we just talk and we have good conversation. It's a quiet life of dignity, a quiet life of dignity, and we converse." And then he's like a fish, right?
Yeah,
trying to get the food. So it's not really dignified, but it's okay.
Yeah, and like they actually do a pan of the room too.
Yes.
And the thing is, like, I don't know because the names are kind of blurry, so I can't read everything. Like, I think that's David Duchovny. They got Liz Taylor. I'm pretty sure that's who was
that were big
who
at
was
the time.
like the Tonight Show. Who was like one of the first guys to do it like way long
Oh,
ago?
Carson maybe. Jimmy
Yeah,
Carson.
Carson Daly. Yeah, they have Dennis Rodman, who is definitely a '90s thing, and actually they also have a cameo of Matt Groening.
Yes, he's the head next to Bender and Fry when they're trying to hide from Leela, pretending to be heads without jars. They're just sitting there.
Barbara Streisand's also there too. Yeah,
right.
Like there's people for the '90s and stuff like I think maybe the biggest sports person in history, I would say, was Michael Jordan, kind of thing. And Dennis Rodman played with Michael Jordan, and he himself is a very character of a person. So they had him there. There's also the U.S. presidents. They'll have all the presidents and stuff like that.
Up to date of the current president
at
that time, which would have been Bill Clinton, right? So you don't see anybody else, but of course, like
I do also like this too. They have
Yeah.
U.S. presidents do not tap on the glass.
Right. Just a nice Clinton, like more respect for the president heads, right? Yeah, Clinton, and then of course the main U.S. president that comes back from history many times, also played by Billy West. Nixon, right?
Nixon.
Richard Nixon, who is hilarious. He's friggin' hilarious in the show.
He's a very good character.
He's always really good there.
Caricature
of him. Yes.
Yes, it is.
So no, I think he's great in there. So anyway,
it's not the last time we see him, which is great.
Right. Now, of course, then Leela has called for backup, right? So she has connections with the police, obviously, because they have to do this kind of like Blade Runner-esque thing because Fry has escaped. So the police show up.
I like this too.
Me too. Yeah, go ahead. Why do you like it? Yeah.
Well, again, product of the time, which is now, well, at least at one point in history, I think about 6 years ago was a big thing. Everyone remembers smartwatches was like when they first came out. This was technically one of the first, I think, smartwatches to be shown because she has a thing on her wrist that she can talk into, has a screen on it and buttons and dials and stuff like that.
Yes.
And I think that an idea like that was to like future wise, hey, why don't we make something like that? And that's kind of what smart watches became in a way.
Except for the camera, we haven't got the camera in it yet, as far as I'm aware.
Well, it's sure basically you have a small computer on your wrist. Is the probably simplest way to describe it.
Right,
and that's kind of what smart wrists are.
Of course,
smartwatches,
and they are going to be coming out even more developed in the near future as well. Right? But that's 1,000 years in the future, and this is what they have. And we're basically
at some point in real life, I think we're going to have actually like chips in our brain and stuff like that. And, Elon Musk I think has some kind of program now that for volunteers or something like that. Don't
Well,
do it, people. Don't do it.
yeah,
Don't get chips in your
don't
brains. Let's
don't. Yeah, we already see what happens with chips in the wrists. Let's not do it with brains, right? Although
no.
that does come up in a later episode of Futurama as well, with mom and her eye or iPods or whatever. They're literally ones that go into your eye. But in any case,
That's
that's
post
way down the
movies. That's
future.
post
That's
movies.
way late. So in any case, yeah, one thing I like about with the police and with the technology scene, all this kind of stuff, is of course, like, I'm a big Star Wars fan, so I love uh, the lightsaber like
Police batons.
police batons that are literally just batons. Like, they don't cut anything, they just hit you, but they're just light and they just hit people over there. And I thought that was really great. So anyway, Leela understands, like, now, like, they're over excessive police force, which of course is like a typical trope in the United States. It still was going on, of course, even back then. And with this, they have the police get the shit kicked out of them by Leela. So we now know that she is this badass kind of person. And then Fry and Bender escape into the Hall of Criminals, which is kind of this little fun side of it. Now, I had one thing here.
Yeah,
This was another
is this the Bender
the
theory?
Bender theory that I was kind of alluding to beforehand. Now, Bender at this point is a jerk, as you mentioned. He's still kind of tricky, but he's not evil by the standards that he is by the future episodes, right? So there's this idea that as we're going in there, Fry's looking to escape. There's a gate or like bars on the window, kind of like a jail cell,
a barred
right?
window, a barred window, yeah,
Right.
like a jail because of the
like
hall,
because it's a hall of criminals, right? So it fits the theme. And of course, Fry begs Bender to do it because Bender, of course, is a bender. Bender says, "No, I can't because I'm programmed to bend for constructive purposes. This would be deconstructing
outside my programming."
Right. So Bender does not break rules. So then he turns around and there's a little light thing, shocks himself, and he reboots essentially after saying, like, "You're full of crap, Fry." He then turns around and says, you make a wonderful argument, Fry. And then he goes and he breaks it apart. So the theory goes as,
and now I can bend whatever I want,
whenever I want,
who
whoever I want. And he does. So this idea is, since he's in the Hall of Criminals, he's rebooted to the idea of the people surrounding him. Therefore, he's taken on the evil personality of the criminal system that he's now kind of incorporated with, because he's done this before.
I thought it was just more of Fry just saying, like, you should do what you want, kind of thing, and then
No.
that was like the last thing he heard.
No,
I didn't. The criminal thing makes good sense though too.
Yeah, well, because we see this again with later episodes with Bender rebooting when he gets shot with the penguins and he becomes a penguin. Right. So we know that he reboots whenever he gets like into this, like, gets knocked out or shocked down. And every time he's surrounded by certain groups of people, he becomes that kind of group of whatever they are. Right. So in this case, he happened to be in a criminal area. Now he's able to bend whatever he wants. Now he's able to break whatever he wants. He's now able to steal whatever he wants. He's free, essentially. So this is kind of the idea for, I think this was a pretty good theory I liked when it came to that. So in any case, that was in there. Leela tries to break in. She finally does, but Bender is able to break it open and trap her inside. So they
escape. Yeah.
Right.
And then Bender locks them back in. Yeah. So that way she can also escape with them.
Right. So they get a good head start, and they head to a little grate, which, a nice little joke here. Little like a little sewer thing, but it's like the bars, and Bender's like, "Haha, I guess somebody's gonna have to bend this," and Fry just opens it. Bender's like, "Aw," but he ends up bending it anyway because, why not?
He wants to
because he can. So they go downstairs, or they go down the stairs into the sewers.
The shaft.
And of course, what's down in the sewers these days? What is this?
Old New York.
Old New York. It's destroyed and there's run down, buildings toppled over everywhere. And Fry feels like this was his home. This was his old neighborhood, as he describes, right? And he has a flashback with he and his ex-girlfriend skating there, and it's like this pool of like horrible cest monsters now. It's horrible. So at the end, Fry gets there, and Leela finally shows up, and Fry gives up. Right? He's like, okay, whatever.
Like,
everything
fine,
I loved,
you win.
Yeah, everything I loved is gone.
I'll become part of your stupid society.
Right. And then, of course, he's able to convince Leela, you know what? It's not for any of us. We don't want to do this either. And she takes the chip out of her hand. Done. Now she's no longer part of the system either, and they're all
fugitives
now. So it's a nice thing there, because of course this is where you really feel this connection brewing between Fry and Leela. Although this doesn't really happen for many years afterwards.
This is the start.
The chemistry started there. Right?
Yeah, I now see it your way, Fry, and I understand that, like, no one wants to be forced into something.
Right.
So
And
yeah,
it's
I'll
just the way.
join you.
Yeah, exactly. And so she feels for him because, of course, as she describes, she knows what it's like to also be alone because at this point she believes to be, a
The
one-eyed
last of her
alien,
kind.
only
Yeah.
of one of her kind, abandoned. No one liked her. She grew up wherever she grew up, and she just wasn't great either. So they're kindred souls, and of course now Bender is Bender. He can do whatever he wants, kind of thing, with this, and then even steals her ring, which starts off his criminal empire system.
Yeah,
Right?
this is his first
So,
theft.
yeah, first theft of everything. So that's good. And now Fry can remember that they do have a way to get out, even though they're fugitives. They can try and hide out with maybe his nephew, which brings to one of my favorite characters of all time, Professor Hubert Farnsworth. And as we go up there, get to his building, and yeah, they bring him in. It's like, who are you? He's like, oh, I'm your distant relative. I'm your uncle. He's like, I don't have an uncle. And then he's like, you do now. Pushes him in. So this is what do you think of this introduction of the professor and his laboratory and his spaceship and his hobbies?
Well, I
What do you
love it
think of
because he's like the crackpot senile old man kind
right?
of thing, right? Like, you're just like, what
Right.
does he
Very
do?
much so.
I
Yeah.
think I think another joke that I have, I just want to see if it is this. Yeah, it's this episode where he's like, yeah, here's my spaceship, here's my
My
workbench, and
balls of
here's my
wire drawer with
full of
wire.
various lengths of wire.
Yeah.
And then Fry's like, whoa, a spaceship, really? Wow, so cool. And then like he's like, yeah, I built it using various lengths of
Some
wire.
right? He's like, let me show you the wire I've used, right? And Leela and Bender are kind of interested. They're looking into the drawer with the wire, but Fry's like focused on the ship because to him it's
Yeah.
nothing, right? This is
He loves
it's a
space.
huge thing, yeah. And it's a spaceship in front of him. It's something he always wanted. So anyway, the police partially, as they mentioned, partially surround them, and they're like, oh, maybe we can steal the ship and take it out for there. Then uh, Farnsworth's line, which I think they had mentioned they were trying to turn this into a catchphrase of his, which didn't stick. It stuck with another one. But he was supposed to say, like, I'm already in my pajamas. I want to do that, but I'm already in my pajamas, which they tried to make stick, but it didn't. So this is kind of a fun little throwaway gag for that. Anyway, they get on the ship. Leela turns out to also have a bit of a ability to drive, but she can't
pilot license.
Right, she can't parallel park, so she can fly a ship though. So anyway, it's New Year's.
Drive stick.
Right, it's New Year's again, 1,000 years later, of course, and the time difference has made it so that it's just ending up on night. And this was a funny gag. I didn't even really realize until I watched it again recently. And this one here, so they're doing the countdown again, right? From different beforehand, it was different countries all doing this, and then of course they're now doing different planets as well as countries in some areas, and with certain people we were introduced to in the episodes, such as like Leonard Nimoy.
All right, yeah, the countdown to 1999 to 2000's New Year's, and this one's going to be 2,999 to 3,000.
Right,
and them taking off.
Right. So in the first part, because this is the part of the joke here, when they get to France, they say, I think they say neuf, because they do the 9 part, right? So neuf, which is of course 9 in French. And then this is the greatest little side joke where they do it again 1,000 years later. The French are there again, and they're still with the Eiffel Tower, but then they say 7. And they look sad when they're doing it. So I think it means that the joke is French got eliminated throughout 1,000 years. So they're sadly having to go with the English language now. So if you watch that part, it's like 7. And so they have to do it in that language because French no longer exists, which we found out kind of later in the series as well.
That's another joke.
Joke.
That's some good thinking. That's some good storytelling.
That was wonderful.
When was that?
There. For the French is no longer a language.
That's no. When was it that the professor made the translator, but only translates it into the stupid unknown language? Hello, bonjour.
Bonjour. Shut up, you. That's when he first clones himself with Kubert because he's showing him around.
So that's original Futurama.
Yeah.
Okay, so then obviously the writer. Yeah, good. I never noticed. I never noticed that before.
Yeah,
how they said 7,
but they say it like sad, like their eyes look down, like 7, because they can't speak French anymore. So I thought that was
it's a
great.
lost language.
Such a great little joke there, and I thought that was wonderful. Any case, So they do the countdown again, and this time, of course, with fireworks, they can escape in the ship. And even though the police are like trying to shoot them down, they can't see them. They get away, and we finish off kind of the episode there with Hubert Farnsworth offering them jobs to be his crew due to his former crew being killed by space
bees.
bees,
I think he says
right?
wasps.
He does say wasps, and they change it. But yes, who cares? Wasps, bees, they are different, but at least then we can make the distinction. Maybe
space bugs with stingers.
Right. He made a mistake when he said wasps. Who cares? It's the show, right? But in any case, his former crew died. Not his first crew, which some people like to believe is his former crew. He's had a few crews, right? This being his current one with Leela, Bender, and Fry. So this is where it finishes off, and then of course Fry has the final words in here, saying like, "Okay, what am I going to do? Are we going to do this? We're going to do this. We're going to do this." And he says, "Oh, you'll just be using my delivery package system and taking packages from one destination to another." So he's like, "I'll be a delivery boy." He's like, "Yeah, exactly." He's like, "Woohoo!" And he wants to be a delivery boy, so different things. So all of this didn't matter. He could have been a delivery boy in the case, and I think that's the overall joke of the episode. And that finishes Space Pilot 3000. Yeah. So overall, I guess we'll kind of touch base on a few things before we're finishing up. But like, I want to ask here, what do you think was the funniest moment of the episode versus the best moment of the episode? Because they could be different.
Yeah, the funniest one to me was like when Bender was going on like, "Oh yeah, I can bend anything,
sure,
bend any degree, 32, 31, or no, 33, 32.
That is
31.
Yeah,
I love that one.
That is great.
There are some clever jokes in here too, like the French one. I like that too.
Yeah, I'm going to throw that one as my favorite, just because I didn't get it until like fairly recently.
Like
so I'm
recently,
gonna
well, I didn't know till now, and it's
go,
very funny because there actually is a back thing though that French got lost. The French
got lost. It's a dead language, so that is pretty great. So yeah, absolutely, that would be my favorite one. And what do you think is the best moment of the episode?
Best moment? I don't know. Like it's just and I'm gonna say it's probably the Nibbler shadow, just because we learn about it later, and stuff like that. That's the best moment. But I still love a lot. This it's a good pilot, like I said earlier. Like, for mind you, again, I didn't want it wasn't the first episode I saw of Futurama, but as pilots go, I like it as a pilot.
Yeah.
You can definitely see from watching past and stuff like that. Like, yeah, it's a pilot. It doesn't have all the magic from the other episodes and stuff. The world building takes time and stuff like that.
Nor all the characters or anything. Like, even your favorite character hasn't been introduced yet. So we have all these things, right? So
later.
Yeah.
But
the next
yeah,
one,
it shows that they can like their personalities or the characters work well with each other. Bender is the first friend Fry has in the future. Even though like he kind of like, "You're my friend, Bender." No, then zap, "Hey, Fry, I'm your friend now." It's not generally what happened, but more or less that's when they became friends. Is when Bender got reset.
Basically, when they become criminals together, right? They become
friends.
Like fair
best
enough.
moment I still will say is the Nibbler shadow. But
so
there's lots of good
set
moments
up for the future of the show, right?
Yes, exactly. Yeah. Because there's a lot of people that asked about it and stuff like that. Because I remember visiting forums back in the day and stuff like that, and people like, "Oh yeah, I remember." I was talking to my friends about it and stuff like that, and then the callback happened so good. It's one of those things that you had to kind of watch per week, and like this is before, I guess, internet pirating and stuff like that. Like you could probably watch a lot of this stuff on YouTube now if you search for it. But back then there was no internet.
You had to actually watch the episode and remember, or you could tape it. You remember tapes, right? You could tape these scenes and episodes. VHS.
Which, what was it? Beta?
Beta. Well, again, these connections, this old technology we discussed, kind of thing that still exists in 1,000 years. In Futurama world, we will touch down again in like other episodes, of course. But my best episode, I would say the best moment of this episode is like when Fry escapes and then he finally gets out to the real world, and then you see like him using the tube, and he's traveling through the tube through all these areas, and there's even like a little Simpsons reference there with the three-eyed fish. Yeah. And so you see all these things, and I'm like, that is so cool. And he goes like through the Statue of Liberty, and he does all this stuff, and then he pops out, hits the wall. I think this is very, very, very well shot, or very well animated, very well designed, and I think that's very, very, very good for it. So I think that was my favorite. My the funniest moment I think is the French language one being gone. Who would you say is your MVP for this
Oh,
episode?
Fry, absolutely Fry,
Fry's
just because
MVP.
he's the main character, stuff
Okay.
like that. Like Leela's a general awesome, Bender's an awesome stuff like that. Professor Farnsworth he's not at his most crackpot, or is this just introduction to him, so you haven't learned his quirks and stuff like
It
that.
works. Yep. Sure. Yep.
Yeah,
But you
gasoline
still
and
say
stuff.
Fry.
But I still say Fry just because it's one of those things that like you are Fry, because we know, at least that people watching this at the time, like, oh, I live in 1999 too. Okay, this is what 1999. It's the same thing with Harry Potter. Harry Potter was you, because he was brought up
the
regular world,
everyday, right? The every guy.
Yeah, and then you
totally.
get brought into the world of Futurama. But in like Harry Potter, he got brought into the world of wizarding and stuff like that. There's a whole bunch of books and stuff like that I love that stuff of being brought into the world of that setting and stuff like that. And that's why I like Fry the most, because you are Fry in this episode, and you're like, oh wow, his life does suck. Oh wow,
you feel
got to the future. Yeah, exactly. Yeah, and so he is my MVP, or whatever the character,
most valuable player,
most valuable player of this episode.
I would say I completely agree with you. Fry is definitely that kind of character for it. But I'm gonna throw this out as my side MVP here is going to be Leela's boss, just because even though you only see him for a scene and barely a scene, but he makes you laugh, and you can get his every character likes like instance from that scene of how he is and all this stuff. And at the end, when he sits back in his desk and he's just like, life is good, and he's the only one that enjoys his life. Out of the whole episode, I think this is my MVP for it. And of course, you see him again later, and he's still funny. But just that one introduction of that scene with this character, I think he's my MVP for this. Just a side one, because of course we're gonna have so many great scenes with Fry and Bender and Leela in the future. So got to throw it out to this guy once.
This is my favorite Fox TV show. Like even like the Graining and stuff like that. I like the new stuff. The Disenchantment, it's okay.
Disenchantment Disenchantment, I think, is more of a serial, and of course, The Simpsons, of course, has just gone a long time. And it's difficult to kind of grasp.
It's older than us. That's how old it is.
Right, and it maybe past its prime, but again, Futurama
it's 100% past its prime.
This beautiful future to it that you can kind of think it's timeless, even though it's kind of outdated.
The possibilities are endless, because they use not only technology, but they also use like creatures and stuff like that.
Yes, right.
It's planets,
languages.
They got lots of stuff to work with that they can do endless. But stories are stories. There's only like, what is it? There's only like 5 stories to ever be told, or something like that.
Exactly.
Or whatever the phrase is. So how many times can you watch the same thing over and over again before you get bored? Me, I've watched Futurama, I don't know, I think probably at least 10 to 20 times all the way through. And like, I'm not even joking. I probably have watched it almost 20 times through. Like, I love this show.
I believe
it's my favorite.
I've been up there too. I've at least watched my favorite episodes at least 20 times. So I'm right there with you. And you know what? Space Pilot 3000 is up there. It is wonderful. It is a very, very good pilot. And for anybody who wants to start the show, if they hadn't, even if we ruined it for you, but even if you hadn't seen the show, this episode kind of guarantees the kind of quality that you're going to get and more. There's never anything less than the pilot for it, bar a few minor episodes maybe. But this episode,
I'm trying to think what my least favorite episode is, I think we'll
get to that. Yeah, I know my favorite episode. Or my least favorite episode. I think we'll get to that. But in any case, the pilot doesn't do that, at least not for us, I think. So we're both.
It's a good middle ground at minimum.
Of course, yeah. I think it sets the bar, and I think that's perfect for a pilot. In any case, is there any final things you'd like to say about Space Pilot 3000?
No, it's again world building. They bring back the tubes a lot and stuff like that. The spaceship is iconic, I believe.
Of course,
it's not part of their. It's not one of the first spaceships to ever be on TV. Obviously, not even on cartoons. I think the Jetsons were like spacey enough.
Sure.
Or there's other ones, yeah. But I would say I love the spaceship too. I'm very happy you get to see it. The spaceship has actually been my wallpaper on my computer many times, different variations, of course, and stuff like that. I have a semi-realistic one now.
Mm-hmm.
But
There you go.
I like the spaceship. I would say it's second MVP in my mind, just
I was
because.
going to say, yeah, you could make it the MVP for that too if you wanted to, but no, fair enough.
Fry's MVP, but then I would say it's spaceship
Spaceship,
second MVP,
okay.
even though it doesn't get introduced until like the last 3 minutes. But it's a staple of Futurama. Like I think it's the icon at some point. Whenever someone sees it on like DVD sets and stuff like that.
It's the first thing you see with the intro. It's the first thing you see.
Yeah,
So
exactly. Yeah.
it's okay, right? Yeah, I would agree with you. The ship is iconic and it is part of the Futurama cast just as much as Fry, Bender, or Scruffy, right? Any of those guys are part of the crew.
We don't meet Scruffy till way later down.
I can't wait till we meet Scruffy, but until that time, no, I think this is great for the episode. And thank you again, Mitchell, for joining me of our review. And yeah, this was Space Pilot 3000. We'll see you guys all next time for the next episode. The series has landed, so we'll get into that and we'll talk. Okay, thanks, Mitch.
Yeah.
Have a great rest of your day.
No problem.
We'll talk to you later. Too. Okay. Yeah, man.
Goodbye.